When you first start to learn how to play the piano, you'll start off with single notes, then you'll move on to intervals like basic ones like seconds and thirds with, two notes together, and then you'll move on to probably triads after that, where we start to have three notes together. The next kind of most common chord would be the seventh, and there's a few different types of seventh chords, and I want to go into them today. Okay, first off, what is a seventh, right? So when we spoke about triads in the past, we know we've got the bottom note, which would be the root, then we go up to the third of that, that scale, if you like, and that would give you the next note, and then from the root we go up a fifth, and that would give you the next note, and then we go up in the seventh. So if you notice, what we're doing is we're actually jumping up in odd numbers, and that's a really common way to build chords, is going up in thirds. All right, but let me just show you roughly what I mean just now. So without going into the kind of quality of the chord, right, if we've got a note on the bottom line and we stack up our thirds, that would give us the triad that we've spoken about before and you've probably seen. If we just go up another third here, this gives us the seventh there, okay, and that's what this interval is here, from the bottom up to the top. Now, there's a couple of ways of thinking about it. As I said, chords are often built on thirds, which would be from there to there to there, and as I said, whatever's kind of easier for yourself. The most common question I see, from on Reddit or from students as well, is, what's a dominant seventh and what's a major seventh? What's the difference? How can we figure it out? So if we go back to Old Faithful, C major, and we just have a look at that, the first thing I want to go over is the major seventh is built off of the tonic, right? And the tonic in C major would be C, right? So that moves about depending on what key you're in, but because we're in C major, we'll stick with that. Now the dominant is the fifth note in the scale, or the fifth degree in the scale, whatever the fancy term you want to put around it, and that just means you start in C, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So C would be the major, G would be the dominant, right? And what we do is we built up the stack of thirds as we spoke about earlier in the video. All right, so if I take it from here, we've got C, and then we've got the third above that, the fifth above that, and then the seventh here. Now that's what we call the major seventh, because we're in C major. Right? Now, as I said before, if we then look at the dominant seventh and we do the same thing, we just build up in stacks of thirds. The key thing here to remember is that we're using notes within C major. Because we're using the dominant of the key, we've got to use the notes that are in the key that we're in. Oh my goodness. Right, so that means we start on the G, we put a third on, to get the D, and then we put another third on and we get the F. Now, a lot of people ask, why is that not an F sharp? Well, F sharp's not in the key of C major, and we're playing the dominant seventh here. All right, so that's your chord there. At the top of the video, I mentioned that there's a few different types of sevenths, and we've covered the most common ones, already. As I said, the first one you'll encounter will be the dominant seventh, then you'll probably come across the major seventh. Now, it's funny how your ear develops. When I have students who first come across the dominant seventh, they think, oh, that sounds really weird. It's really clashy, and then you get used to it, and then they get introduced to the dissonance of the major seven, which I promise you'll grow to love it. It sounds great. What I want to do is I want to just talk about the other ones as well. So if we have a look, the first one that I want to talk about that we haven't spoken about already is the major minor seventh, okay, which is we've got the major chord here, and then we go up a minor third, which gives you the C, E, G and B flat. Okay, you'll see this in the music. And the next one we want to go to is the minor seventh, okay, which is the minor triad at the bottom and still got that minor third at the top, okay. Okay, the next one that I want to talk about is the half diminished, all right. So if we take the diminished C chord, which is the C, the E flat and the G flat, and then we keep the B flat at the top, all right. Okay, and the last one we'll go over is the full diminished, where we have the C, E flat, G flat, and then this is actually called B double flat, or A to normal people. Okay, that's the one that sounds a bit like a train coming. Okay, so before I go into the last point, if you're finding this useful, please like the video. If you've got any questions, like what on earth are you talking about, just let me know in the comments, and if you subscribe to the channel, that would be really helpful. Thanks very much. Each one of the sevenths has got a bit of a shorthand version, you know, so that's, well, it'd be quicker to write, and also it would take up a lot less space. If you have to write C diminished seventh all the time and whatever else, then it becomes a bit, yeah, a bit wordy. So what I want to do is just go over what they would look like in shorthand. So if I just show you on the iPad just now. So major seventh, which we spoke about earlier, major seventh, could either be just MAJ7, or quite often you'll see a triangle with a 7, all right? The next one, the dominant seventh, which as I said is probably the first one that you'll come across. Normally you'll just see a 7 on its own, okay? And then if we move on, we have the minor seventh. I'm going to change these to equals actually. And then normally what you would see there would be a minus and a 7, because if you see a minor chord in shorthand, if it was C minor, for example, you would see C minus, or if it was A minor, you would see A minus, or you could just have a small m, but minus is useful for that as well. The half diminished, I'll just write half dim, that's me. You have, it's like an O with a score through it and then a 7, all right? And then if we go to the full dim, which is probably me more in the mornings, we have a full circle and a 7, all right? So that covers all the shorthand symbols that you'll see in lead sheets, for example. Okay, so I hope you found that video useful. There's quite a lot to sevenths. As I said, the major ones that I would get started with would probably just be dominant and then major sevenths, and worry about the rest later if you ever get asked about them. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.